as a society, I think we've become obsessed with hacks. What's the health hack? What's the business hack? Everything is like we're all trying to hack something.
You've got to trust that there aren't any shortcuts. When you then are fully present to the march, that's when you see the magic.
What are we going to chat about today? What's top of your mind for an exploration for ourselves and for our listeners today?
I just thought it'd be cool to revisit a topic that we kind of put in the room quite a while ago, and around the concept of, committing to something that probably had a high probability of failure. And I think we spoke about the concept of the misogi, and I got into my rucking as a result of it. And I mean, you love your hiking, and you've climbed Ben Nevis twice. You've been up Snowdon. You've done some of the tall peaks, and when you were in Annecy, you were sending me pictures of your amazing hikes. And I just, as you sort of get older, and having turned 50 this year, you're increasingly aware of your mortality and your aching joints and your inflexible hips. But I think the idea that you're as old as you feel rang true for me on the Highland Way, and I was just so chuffed to be out there, almost manifesting what I started 2 years ago with the rucking, because my legs felt incredibly strong. Like, aside from the, flesh-eating bacteria and the fact that my shoes nearly walked out of the room twice and I had to throw them away on day 5. Like, that aside, I felt incredibly strong physically. And I felt like I could have kept going. Like, if you said to me, like, you have to walk back to Fort William now, I'd be like, okay, I can do it. It's going to hurt, but I can do it. And I don't think I would have felt that way if I hadn't been rucking, because I
Mm.
don't think my legs would have been as strong as they have been. And so this whole idea that, and it's interesting because I think for a lot of us, there's this pursuit of instant gratification. So we want to go to the gym and we want to hit the leg press machine, and then we want to be like super strong immediately. Or if not immediately, it should happen within the next couple of weeks. And you just get this deep appreciation for these things take time. And I have the benefit now of hindsight, and starting my misogi, doing my 9-mile ruck, which I've now built up to 40 pounds. So I started at 10 pounds, and now I ruck with 40 pounds plus, because I have my laptop and cables and all the other stuff in it. And just what's actually happened, and how my legs, I wouldn't say my belly yet, but my legs have transformed. Um, and how good it felt to be out there on the West Highland Way. And I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it, because I wasn't waking up every morning full of dread, thinking, how the hell am I going to get through this? It was a case of like, I know I can face anything that this thing throws at me today. It's just about, how do my feet hold up?
Mm. What do you think is there, maybe there's no difference, but like, is there another version of Bilos from times gone by who didn't know this? And what was it that he didn't know?
I think it's a good question. Fellows didn't know to be patient, and he didn't know you didn't know that you didn't know the depth of the reward that was on offer if you go on the 20-mile march.
Mm.
You've just got to sometimes do the 20-mile march day in and day out. And then when you look back, you've covered a phenomenal amount of ground versus trying to sprint from pillar to post and thinking that you're covering a lot of ground.
Mm. Gosh, that's quite far reaching, isn't it, as well? Because, like, in one sense, it's easy to see this as being about, like, just exercise and fitness and I know as we get older, ability to do stuff, but there's something there in what you said that I think really rings true. Just how much time. I wonder if there's a correlation between patience. I think there is between patience and 20-mile marching, and then like what we often fall into the trap of doing, which is going 100 miles an hour in 10 different directions and then being heavily discouraged because when we stop to take a breath, we realize like the needle hasn't really moved on anything. And then we think that we're getting something wrong. I wonder if there's just something in that. Like, is that the kind of instant gratification mindset that causes us to go? What do you think? Like, what do you think causes us to sprint around and kind of try and do everything at once and maybe also what do you mean by the 20-mile march? Like you and I have talked about that concept before and we know where it comes from, but maybe you can just expand upon that a little bit because there's just those two or three things that I'm seeing in this, which is wow, what Bilos didn't know was the power of patience and the depth of the reward that sits on the other side of the 20-mile march. And what I hear though is that the old Bilos was perhaps enamored with also the sprinting around, like going a million miles an hour in multiple different directions. So I'm just kind of pulling on those different threads to go, well, so what's there? Like, what are we seeing that might be maybe universally true beyond that's true for me and it's true for you and it's true for everyone.
Oh, so firstly, let me just say that I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. So
Mm,
we're all wired differently. So some people enjoy the sprinting from pillar to post, and that kind of fuels their endorphin needs. Um, but I do think the difference is when you're trying to do incredibly hard things, and I liken the journey that we've been on for the last couple of years, well, certainly longer than 2 years, but on this podcast as an example,
mm,
when you're grappling with difficult things to wrap your head around, you've got to put in the hard yards. And for our listeners who get some utility out of this podcast or some comfort or some insight or are challenged or whatever they derive from it, they are on their own journey of discovery and like all of us just want to be happy and full of love and kindness. But in order to achieve that, you've got to do the 20-mile marches. You got to you got to do the grounding work. You've got to explore. You've got to put in the hard yards. You've got to face the unfathomable, the difficulties, the challenges. And then slowly, what happens is you get this kind of confidence uh, this this calm, this level of insight where you probably say less, you worry less, you turn off the noisy intellect more, and you operate from a different place. But that takes time. It's not instant. And yes, like somebody like Mavis or Dickon will tell you, like, yeah, it's just one thought away. But they have spent their lives on the 20-mile march of this journey, and they take great delight in it because the depth of the reward when you put in the hard yards is magnificent. And we've seen it. We've seen it. They've been on the show and they've spoken about it, and they've tickled our inklings with everything that they put on the table. But the concept of the 20-mile march, you know, is is I think it comes from that Amundsen Scott story,
Mm.
where you know you had two famous explorers racing for the South Pole. One spent an incredible amount of time doing his homework, living with indigenous Inuits, understanding how to mush properly, how to survive on a very specialized diet, and set off with just dogs, men, sleds, and supplies, made depot drops along the way, marked those depot drops so that even in blizzards you couldn't miss them, and was very disciplined about marching 20 miles every single day. No more, no less. And just getting through it, like just having the discipline, no matter how hard, no matter how inclement, getting through that. And then the other guy, wonderful soul, bit of a dreamer, tough as nails, took dogs, took ponies, took snowmobiles, took did depot drops, but his depot drops were too far apart. They weren't as structured as Amundsen's. Marked them with one single flag, so they couldn't even find them. In fact, when they found his bodies, they were just, I think, a couple of miles from a depot drop, but they just couldn't find it in the blizzard. Um, and some days they'll do 13 miles, and some days they'll do 50 miles. Um, and there was this sort of feast and famine sort of, and so there was no predictability or it's not even about the predictability. That is a payoff, I guess. That's a byproduct, but there's just there's a I think it's tapping into your wisdom versus your intellect. That's what it really boils down to. The wisdom says 20 miles and you'll you'll reach your South Pole. You'll get there. It's going to be hard. It's going to be long. It's going to be many, many days. You wish you weren't doing this, but you'll get there. The intellect says, no, there's a quicker way. There's a quicker way. Just let's go. Let's go do this. And then you realize, you don't always reach it, or you convince yourself that whatever you did attain was really what it was really good enough. But secretly, it's not it's not what you really wanted. And so when I was on the West Highland Way, what was really interesting for me was there was just this deep feeling of contentment, being content in the discomfort and the pain, and just enjoying the 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 grind.
Mm. Yeah, I'm smiling. The intellect and the ego, like what the intellect and the ego tells you, is just such a such an interesting thing, because I think that I think that ego part of your being, or whatever you want to call it, your psychology, is so predicated towards the idea that that its job is to keep you away from discomfort.
Mm.
You know, um, but actually, and because that's what I was just thinking about. It's like, even thinking about Scott, because when the weather was good, Scott would go and, as you say, hammer in 50 miles. But then when the weather was bad, sometimes they would just hunker down and be like, "Oh, it's too bad to go out today." And he's was it the South Pole they were going to? Yeah,
Hmm.
South. So, like in many ways, like that would stack up, wouldn't it? It looks like, well, that must be true because it was the South Pole. But yeah, on the other side, you've got an Amundsen that no matter what the conditions were, they were like 20 miles. Like we get up and we do 20 miles. It might take us longer, but we'll do 20 miles. And then on the good days, we'll do 20 miles. Probably won't take us as long, and that's good. And I just thought, oh my God, that is the perfect analogy for life, in one sense, because it's the giving up control to the external, believing that like the narrative about the external conditions actually has value. With regards to anything, it could be work, it could be exercise, it could be um, relationships. It doesn't really matter, but I think that the and I want to kind of link this back to patience because there's something that you said there that really resonated. Or when you said that, it really struck a chord. But the wisdom is always just kind of giving you the nudge in terms of what you know to do, which is different from what you always want to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there are days in the last 2 years when you've been rocking that you kind of thought, at a superficial level, you're like, I don't actually want to walk 9 miles with 40 pounds on my back. But you walked 49 miles with 40 pounds on your back because you had a deeper there was the deeper realization that you were choosing to listen to, which is like, and I'm going to walk 9 miles with 40 pounds on my back. And that's what I hear is like the deeper reward. It's like the deeper reward, which is not about getting to the end of the 9 miles. It's the deeper reward within your experience of life that's on
Mm.
offer.
100%.
And
Yeah,
that
I
really,
mean,
yeah. Sorry, go on.
no, no, just picking up on that thread, like the reward is yes. Um, I'm probably a little fitter and stronger than I would have been had I not done it, and my legs feel strong when I'm walking up a mountain in the Scottish Highlands. But it's what you see beyond that that I think is the real gem of it.
Mm,
And I think, I mean, I'm not anything special. I mean, there are people who pursue tough things, much tougher things, who I think really understand this. I mean, it becomes addictive because it's got nothing to do with your physical transformation. That's a wonderful byproduct, but it comes with a massive payload in terms of your I would call it your spiritual health.
yeah, well, I actually really like that term, your spiritual health. And you used another word before, which I thought, oh yeah, I wonder does spiritual health feel like confidence? Like when you've got like when you're really spiritually healthy. What I don't act like I love the term that it also is what we talk about as confidence,
Mm,
and because we're just like super grounded in ourselves, we're super grounded in the experience of life. But we've also, and I think it's when Dickin was on and he was talking about like it's the power of experience.
mm,
Because you've experienced it. You don't know because you've read a book. You don't know because you've listened to this podcast or any other podcast. You know because you've experienced it. And that is where, like, I think the patience comes in. Like, that's why I think patience is such a an interesting thing. It's the patience to allow it to come to you. Like,
Yes.
you didn't know 2 years ago when you read about the Masogi and then you heard about rucking and thought, "Oh, I'm just gonna give that a go." You actually didn't know you were gonna be doing the West Highland Way in August 2025. Um, and, for the listener, you're also gonna be running, like, a half marathon next week in Ireland, and you've got, like, it's not like you're just done. You didn't know that,
Mm,
and yet it's come to you, and then here you are having this conversation about it. And I think there's something about, like, being patient for no other reason than being patient and
mm,
trusting that, like, whatever's meant for you it'll find you, in a really positive way. I know that this is the kind of, hey, listen, what's coming for you won't miss you. But I think sometimes that can feel quite, like, challenging. Oh God, like, what's coming for you won't miss you. And that's just true in every respect, but it's also true for the good stuff. It's like, just have some faith that if it is whatever your 20 miles a day are, do them. And, I've just started a new gig work wise, and I'm really excited about it. But this really resonates for me with that. It's an early stage company, and, with big dreams and big goals, and different stakeholders who are vested in kind of trying to create that outcome. And it is so easy to get lost into the idea of, like, okay, that means we've got to go a million miles an hour every single day. Or it's like, it could be that. And sometimes we will go a million miles an hour, and that's okay. But it's also slowing down enough to be able to go, but are we staying true to what we know? Like,
mm,
not what we think, but what we know. And and are we ready to be patient enough to give that time to show itself? And that's just really interesting to me, like, giving it something enough time for it to show you what's on the other side of it. Exercise, I think, is a great one because, and actually, particularly as you get older, exercise is a great one because fucking takes longer. That's for sure. Like, I'm only a couple of years behind you, and it definitely takes longer. Um, but I think that is, and I'm sure this resonates with the listener. That's the tricky bit, is being able to sit in the not knowing how something's going to pan out, and yet having a knowing that there's a direction that you're called to go, which may not always make sense.
mm.
It may not always make sense. And I think your rucking is a good analogy for it, because in one sense people were like, why are you rucking 9 miles a day with 40 pounds in your back? And I don't know, if someone asked you, you would have had a better reason than, well, because I want to, because I'm
Mm.
like, I don't know. Why would you have answered that
Yeah,
without?
I think it's just because I'm curious,
Mm, yeah.
curious to see what happens.
Hmm. Funny, all these words are coming out, and they're like amazing mix of words, patience, curiosity, confidence. I wonder if there's something about, like, is there something in there about the consistency? Like, that 20-mile march just smacks of, just maybe it's just the showing up regardless of the noise that's going on inside your head. I guess that's quite a big one, isn't it? Just
Well, next week we've got a guest on, and just as a little teaser. So this individual and his friend set out to change the way we build roads.
mm,
And so before I joined Pete on this journey of supporting these innovative companies, I think Pete had been supporting these guys for 2 years. So for the last 5 years, this technology, which is a sulfur-based, um, well, it's a sulfur polymer that they've manipulated to be a potential replacement for bitumen when you're building roads, and so it acts as the glue with the rocks. Um, I mean, this has been bench science for a long, long time, and and old Bilos, when old Bilos got involved, like my impatience was through the roof with this because I just I read as much as I could and I thought I understood the process, but I couldn't understand why this was just taking so long. And a combination of our like cajoling and applying a bit of pressure, but then also learning to be patient resulted in 3 weeks ago in Massachusetts, we did the first laying the of two parking spaces. So this amazing partner, Kevin Cassidy from Cassidy Paving, and Boston Properties and the Mass Mobility Hub, we all came together. And Boston Properties said, no problem. Here's a giant car park. We love this innovative stuff. We want to be at the forefront of it with you. Go for it. So we put down two parking spaces in this giant car park, and that was the first time that Uber binder has been laid. Now it's taken 5 years to
Mm.
do two parking spaces. And there's another big trial in Spain next year, and there's another trial in the UK later this year in November. And Jet will tell us all about this, I'm sure. But you've those guys epitomize the 20-mile march because there are no shortcuts when you're when you're when you're designing that type of thing. And everything from critical, you know, hazard sort of type elements to like you can't just cook up giant batches of sulfur based stuff and hope it doesn't explode. Like you've got to be very, very careful. And so, and you've got to be able to manipulate the polymer in a way that it behaves the way you need it to behave, and it doesn't crack roads, and it doesn't do, and like there's a lot of just long, arduous, patient bench science that has to happen before you get to a place where you can go and put down two parking spaces. And there's still a long road, pardon the expression, ahead of us, um, to putting down a mile and then putting down 100 miles and then repaving the surface of the planet for good, and getting rid of toxic carcinogenic bitumen. Um, and so Jet, I would vouch, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, and hopefully he doesn't even listen to this podcast before he comes on. But I I would vouch that Jet's going to come onto this podcast and he's going to talk about the what he's seen through this process, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with building roads.
Well, like, I think that's a beautiful teaser because he, like you said, Jet's going to be our very next guest. So 1 week from this conversation, we'll be able to kind of link back and um, see what Jet says and how it relates. The thing that stood out for me in what you said there was there are no shortcuts. And that really resonates. There are no shortcuts, and yet we are obsessed with the idea that there is. As a society, I think we've become obsessed with hacks. Like, what's the hack
Mm.
that will, like, what's the health hack? What's the business hack? What's the AI hack? Everything is like, we're all trying to hack something. And I think what's really interesting to me when you talk to anybody, thinking about all the guests we've had in this podcast, when I think about like performers that I really admire, whether it's in the world of business or sport, I don't hear any of them say, well, you know what? Like, I actually found this hack when I was 15. I found a hack, which meant I didn't have to train as hard as anyone else, but I was twice as good. Or, I didn't even have to work at this business. I just found this hack. Like, no one says that.
Mm,
Like, a hack is what society sells to your ego.
mm,
Your ego buys the hack.
mm.
Your ego is a sucker for a shortcut. Ooh, oh fuck. Hey, but if we go that way, like we'll get there faster. And it's just not true. And there's a whole economy built around it. Actually, it makes me think of B when we had Bea Link on a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about how like we're being sold we've been sold convenience and we've been sold all of these things, but actually it keeps us away from the life we actually want to live. But
Mm.
it's very lucrative for those people that sell us the dream. And I think, it's probably somewhere in our biological wiring is the idea, like when you go back to those ancestral times where, it was a good idea to be wired to conserve energy, because you didn't know when you were going to get your next top up.
Yeah.
You didn't know if you were going to like run out of gas, like on a human level. It's just a long time since that was true. At least for the world that you and I live in, and not everyone, I guess, is entirely lucky enough to be in that situation. But for the vast majority of people, it is no longer true,
Mhm.
and it's letting go of that idea. And yeah, I just that just ties in with this patience point. What's the value of being patient? It's, well, what if on the other side of that patience was getting to experience something in a whole new way? But you have to be patient because you don't know when that's going to arrive. And actually, it's putting down, letting go of the idea that there's a shortcut, or letting go of the idea that there's an easy path. And it just strikes me, it's just true. It's just like, I think, when I listen to a Mavis or a Dickin or anybody or a Christie, or you know everyone, no one's walking like an easy road. It's not like there's not hard things happening. I think it's just that there's a real acceptance of, oh yeah, like this is what the path is paved with. The path is paved with tough, challenging moments alongside the beautiful moments, and that is the experience you want. But if you're not willing to open yourself up to the tough, challenging pieces, then you can't get that deepness of the reward.
Mm. It's funny, I had an insight on the Island Way, because I would like to be 20 pounds, 30 pounds lighter for sure, and I'm
Yeah.
very blessed because Vanny is she's an amazing cook and makes amazingly healthy meals, and we make healthy choices, and we've switched to grass fed everything, and we try to avoid the bad carbs, eat the good carbs, protein heavy, blah blah blah, all the good stuff. Um, and but I was like, I would really like to shed 20 to 30 pounds, especially around my midriff, like my gut, my
Mm.
butt. And so I was like, okay. and then walking on the Highland Way, you're like, well, I'm justified having the full Scottish breakfast every morning because I'm burning serious calories here, and that's probably true. But what it did show me was, and I mean, it's so obvious when you think about it, but it's like, oh, okay, you want to lose weight, Billows, you want to lose 30 pounds. It's not going to happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a discipline involved in it. And yes, you exercise and you go on long walks and you cycle your bike many miles and you do your rucking and blah blah blah. But it's about maintaining the discipline and 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 doing the 20-mile march. Now, I can take Ozempic if I wanted to. In fact, we have friends who take Ozempic and they look fucking amazing. And like they've regained their figures from their 20s. But my wisdom tells me I don't think Ozempic's the right thing for me. And so, but what I am excited about and what I am deeply curious about is this next phase of my misogi, which is, oh, I'm going to shed 30 pounds. And I wonder how that's going to go.
Mm.
Wonder what I'm going to see.
Well, so like there's just an old story that popped into my head, which is when I did the John O'Groats to Land's End bike ride, like cycling from the top to the bottom of the UK. I think
Know
I'm
what you're going to say?
I think I'm one of the only people that cycled 1,000 miles in 10 days and put on weight and finished half a stone heavier than when I started. And I remember Sean said to me she was like, "Oh, that's probably because you put on muscle." And I was like, "No, I think it's to do with the fact that we ate Cornish pasties all the way for our like lunches and we drank beer every night and we had a great time while doing it." Because yeah, 'cause it's the most easy thing in the world. Like you work out hard, you do stuff like that, and you go, "Yeah, no, I can eat whatever I want." And it's like, oh yeah, because that's what the top athletes do. Um, so I was just smiling as you said that. But then the other piece that, so yeah, that made me smile. But when you talk about losing weight or any of these things, and then just that. Um, and I can't remember who says this or where it came from. I think it's James Clear, the atomic habit guy, who says this. It's like people talk about wanting the life, but they don't want to invest in the lifestyle.
Mm,
It's something like that, but I really like it. It's like, I really want to be, I'd like to be lighter. And it's like, oh, you can be lighter. You more disciplined about your food and eat less. Like because I put on weight over the holidays and all that stuff, and I like, yeah, it's not rocket science, is it? It's like put less calories in and burn more on the other end. That's it. Like eat smaller portions. Um, and that's just that. There's a truth in that. I think for most of the things that we want in life, actually, the answer's pretty well established. It's pretty well established. It's just sometimes not particularly sexy,
mm,
not particularly exciting. If someone goes, and I'm being a little bit punchy with us all because I think I'm speaking to myself. I'm not speaking to anyone else. People are like, I'd like to be more confident. It's like, okay, well, do more hard things. Do more hard things. Do more things that scare you, and you'll find your confidence.
mm.
Like confidence is a consequence. It's not a prerequisite. I would like to. I'd like to be healthier. I'd like to be light. Okay, like eat less, do more exercise. Yeah. I'd like to be more successful. Okay, great. Like at what? In business. Okay, like then like there's do more of these things. Like put a proper operating model in place. And invest more of your time into that. Speak to more customers. It'll work. More than likely, it'll work. You'll be more successful. You might not be like Bill Gates, but that's not what you're saying. And I just think there's something in this whole conversation which is coming back to, and it does come back to wisdom. Like there's a few different cliches about wisdom, but one of the there's a few that I like, but one of the ones that feels resonant to this conversation is wisdom often sounds like common sense.
Mm.
And we're quick to dismiss common sense. We go, oh, well,
Common
that's just,
sense is not sexy.
yeah, we just go, oh, well, that's just common sense. And you're like, yeah, yeah. But it's not a rule book. It's just, yeah, and that's what your wisdom is. Your wisdom is actually your common sense. That to me is what wisdom is. It's the sense that's common to all of us. And wisdom, actually, more often than not, is not sexy. Like that's a kind of, I think that feels true to me. Wisdom ain't sexy, you know. Most of the time, it's kind of like a bit, really, really. Is that what you're telling me to do? And it's like, yeah, that's what I'm telling you to do. It's like just do that thing. Do that thing. It might even be sometimes it might be something that feels a bit like, oh, I know to do that, but I don't really want to do it. Sometimes it feels so mundane that you think to yourself, but like, what's the silver bullet? And it's like it's not about the silver bullets. It's sometimes just about you know putting lead in the machine every day. I don't really want to go down the whole bullet analogy. I was like more lead bullets, but it kind of is that. And I think that's kind of underrated, isn't it, in all of these things? Because
Mm.
it is definitely not it's definitely not what the world is selling at the moment. Like the world does not sell simplicity and kind of the boring truths. That's not what really gets the most airtime. Or there's not a lot of TikTokers out there that are getting like billions of likes by saying, yeah, it's this simple.
Yeah, and something like AI is an accelerant to that, right? So
Mhm.
so it's it it almost now is it legitimizes the path of least resistance,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so it's really interesting. But but if you dig deep enough, like what a company like Nvidia has done and is
Mm,
doing, as an example, it's got fuck all to do with taking shortcuts. Those guys have those guys have been the most disciplined 20-mile marches around. They are the Amundsen of
mm,
the semiconductor space. Intel, as an example, are the Scots, and
mm.
they just got a bit lazy, and they got a little bit, a little bit bolshy, and oh well, we'll march 50 days on the sunny days, and we'll spend the rainy days in the tent. And Nvidia just marched straight past them, and now you know. So I think it's really interesting because I think they're going to be all sorts of really interesting innovations. But I think what you're pointing to will continue to hold true. I think there are no shortcuts, despite the fact that we have the most amazing tools at our fingertips to take every shortcut there is.
Yeah, I was just curious because you'd mentioned AI, and so I just popped a question into ChatGPT. What is the boring truth about wisdom that everyone wants to ignore? And its response was, wisdom is slow, ordinary, and often useless until hindsight makes it obvious. Um,
There you go.
it comes from mistakes, boredom, repetition, and paying attention when nothing glamorous is happening.
Yeah,
Most people want shortcuts, but wisdom is just is just accumulated pattern recognition paid for in time and pain. Not
there
sure
you
though.
go.
Yeah, but isn't that like it's fun out? It's interesting just how quickly that comes up because I was just curious what AI would say. Because AI is one of those things. You and I have been like you've fallen in love with Claude. You
Oh
love
yeah,
Claude,
Claude saved my life. I'm
and
so busy, but Claude just allows me to spend most of my time doing really valuable things instead of a lot of my time doing mundane things to try and get to the valuable things that I just don't seem to have enough time to do.
yeah, because there's a great example of like the where people would like with AI. I think people are outsourcing their wisdom to AI. They're like, "Oh, AI will give me the answer." It's like, no, you have the answer.
Mm,
AI is something that can accelerate that, or it can deepen it and be like, "Oh, okay." Like if you went to Claude, which would be a cool experiment for you to do, and be like, "I know I want to lose 20, 30 pounds, and I'd love it to be in a masogi." And it would be so interesting to see what would come up now that you have that, and be Claude would be like, "Oh yeah, great! Like let's put it together uh, a little masogi for you for the next however long." But what would be your bumper sticker for life then off the back of this conversation?
it'd have to be something like embrace your misogi because it will always end in a rainbow.
Okay, cool. I like that. Yeah, yeah. Well, brother, this has been cool.
Yeah,
It's felt like coming home.
I know. It's nice. It's nice to just get back to the two of us every now and then and see what the universe has served up and what's come across our paths as we get into adventures.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And you've teed us up nicely. We've got Jet in a few days, so that will be that's going to be fun. Another fun conversation. So
Yeah,
for our listeners, look out for that one. This is a dude that was with us in New Hampshire a year or so, actually coming up to just a year
a
ago.
year ago. Yeah,
And he's a beautiful soul with lots of wisdom to share. So that's going to be it's going to be a doozy of an episode. Cool. All right, man. Well, listen, to our listener, thanks for tuning in. We hope, as always, that you've had some wisdom or insight that's emerged off the back of listening to us go on our meanderings and our exploration. I think for me, the standout on this is the idea of the 20-mile march, coming back to that, just that trust and just showing up
yeah.
each day and just doing what you know to do, and having the patience and the faith to know that that is the path, and that
Well,
idea of spiritual
I
health.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think faith is a key one there. Like faith that there are no shortcuts.
Mm,
You got to trust that there aren't any shortcuts, and
yeah.
that's hard for a lot of us. And then when you then are fully present to the march, that's when you see the magic. That's when you see the depth of the learning.
Yeah,
And it's
baby.
richer and more rewarding than where you think the shortcut leads to.
Mm. Cool. Well, let's leave it with that nugget.
Okay.
And folks, have an amazing week. Whatever your 20-mile march is, just trust in that and put one foot in front of the other. That's all we have to do. And as always, go forth and live into your brilliance. See you next week.